So you've decided to switch to Team Red for your next GPU, and the RX 9070 is the next GPU you want to buy. We're not going to be going super into depth with this build guide today. We're just going to be going over the basics for these specs and what you can expect for gameplay and FPS averages and stuff like that when you build this PC. So let's just get right into it. So starting with the CPU, we have the Ryzen 5 9600X 6-core 12-thread. Right now on Newegg it's $221 and you get a 500 gig Gen 4 NVMe SSD for free with it. So that's not too bad of a price. You can go with a 7600X if you wanted to save a few bucks, but $221 plus the 500 gig SSD is pretty solid in my opinion. And while you're getting a new gen GPU, you might as well get a new gen CPU from AMD. Cooling that CPU, we have the ID Cooling SE214XT in black. This is a really basic 4 heat pipe CPU cooler that gets the job done. It's really cheap and it's always in stock. $17.99 or just 18 bucks if you wanted to round up. It's a great looking cooler and it performs just nicely for our nice power efficient CPU, and there's no problems with it. So why spend the extra money? Next up for the motherboard, since I'm going with all new gen parts, I'm going with the ASRock B850M Pro A Wi-Fi. I picked this up on Newegg for $138.99, and if you wanted to save a few bucks, you could also take out the Wi-Fi option and get it for $129. So you can save about $9 there, but this motherboard's pretty awesome with plenty of USB on the back, a USB-C connector on the back as well, along with a BIOS flashback button, and of course Wi-Fi in case you ever wanted to use that. So just a pretty solid motherboard for your budget micro ATX builds, and I'm not gonna have any complaints with this ASRock board at all, because in my opinion, ASRock has the best budget motherboards. Next up for storage, since you definitely want to get more than just the 500 gigs that comes with the CPU that's going on right now with that deal, we got a 1TB NVMe SSD from TimeTech. You can pretty much find any 1TB Gen 4 NVMe on Amazon for $50, like the Clevcraft C910 is a Gen 4 NVMe with good read and write speeds, and it comes in at 50 bucks. So we paid $55 for this one, not too bad for the price. I will say, any 1TB or even 2TB NVMe is going to be just fine if you wanted to go ahead and future-proof your build. Next up for RAM, I'm going to recommend any 32 gig DDR5 RGB or just black RAM at 6000 MHz at CL30 or 32 rating. Now the RAM in this build is actually not 32 gigs, it's 64 gigs, and it's just what we had on hand, but in general, for this price of a build, I'd recommend 32 gigs and, dual channel DDR5 32 gigs at 6000 MHz, you're going to be just fine. And you can find plenty of RGB and non-RGB kits for around $80 to $90, depending on if you want the color or not. Next up is the power supply, and honestly, any 750 watt 80 plus gold unit is going to be just fine. The one I'm running right now in this PC is the CO-Type 750 watt 80 plus gold. I can't really seem to find it on Amazon right now, so you could pretty much opt for like an ASRock Challenger. You can run with an MSI Mag A750GL. Those are two good options for you if you wanted to switch to one of those, but any 750 watt power supply from any reputable brand is going to be just fine. 750 watts is the recommended power supply specification for the RX 9070 from AMD, but with this GPU and then of course our 9600X from AMD, it's going to be really power efficient and you're not even going to get close to that 750 watts. We got two more parts left for this exact PC, but we're going to be talking about the cables next, which is going to be some FormulaMod purple and black sleeve cables. Now you can save the $25, $26 if you wanted to save a bit of money, but honestly, I wanted to go with a nice color scheme for this build since there isn't much RGB going on in the system inside this case. So I just went with some nice black and purple sleeve cables, but you can of course change that or just omit them if you don't really want to use them. And lastly, everything is inside of this nice Okinos Aqua 3 air case. Now you've probably seen the ARGB version of this case plenty of times on plenty of YouTube channels, but this one has 3 black fans to keep this build nice and stealthy. And for 65 bucks, you can't really complain for this case because it does a really good job at filling in some nice components for even like larger GPUs like this 9070. So yeah, it's definitely more on the budget end of cases, but if you're trying to be budget conscious for your PC build, this is not a bad option. And now obviously this build is a 9070 build guide, so we of course have the Gigabyte RX 9070 inside of this build here, and if you can find one, you can be expected to spend around $600 to $700 depending on if you want to pay the markup. I think we both bought these, so they're probably around $675 if I had to put a number around that, but 16 gigs of GDDR6 memory. If you wanted to spend the extra couple bucks, you could also get the 9070 XT, which does offer a bit bump in performance, but I'd say this card is really comparable to like a 7800 XT. So paired with the CPU and then the rest of the parts in this build, it's going to be a great option for a well-balanced 1440p gaming PC. Now, all in, your total price of this build is going to be $1,225 plus tax, so it's a pretty solid build option for you if you're not wanting to spend over $1,500 for a nice 1440p system, and I don't think you're going to be too upset with how good this thing performs. Now, this being a quick build guide, I didn't really have much time to benchmark this exact PC for you since it's also running different kinds of RAM speeds than I recommend, but we do have a couple benchmarking videos on PC Bros LLC, the YouTube channel, and we have a build with the 9700X, which is just a bit of a step up in terms of CPU power from this CPU, But I will say, in terms of gaming performance, there's not going to be really any major difference between the two. They're both using RX 9070, so we're going to use those as a benchmark. And if you wanted to do some more research on your own to see exactly how a 9600X paired with a 9070 will perform, I can bet you money there's plenty of options out there for you on YouTube to see how exactly this PC would perform. But let's go straight into the benchmarks. We have Cyberpunk 2077 on ultra settings in 1440p. It averaged 138 FPS, which for a 1440p ultra AAA title is pretty awesome. We're going to go next into Black Myth Wukong, and on high settings in 1440p, we're averaging around 187 to 190 FPS. That's with frame gen enabled, so if you wanted to take that off, you can definitely do that. And your averages would lower a little bit, but honestly, pretty solid performance for, again, a high setting preset on 1440p for a $1,200 PC. Can't really complain there. And then last AAA title we're gonna be talking about is gonna be Call of Duty Black Ops 6. We tested this one in 1440p extreme settings, and we're averaging around 130 FPS. So again, another one of those more demanding titles that can easily hit 144 FPS on extreme settings. Pretty solid for a $1,200 PC like this one, and then pretty much any other game you're gonna throw at it, like Valorant, CS2. Your more easier to run games are gonna run just fine on this, no problem. Over 200 FPS on high settings without a doubt with this nice GPU. So that's pretty much gonna wrap up all the benchmarks on this PC. I don't really have too many for you guys today, but again, this is a really solid 1440p system, and you can definitely take a look at other 9070 benchmarks out there on YouTube because there are tons of them out there. A lot of people are really interested in this card, so if you can find one for yourself, it's probably a good idea to pick one up. I wanna know from you guys, how would you change this PC build up? Would you maybe upsize the case, maybe go up to an ATX, or keep it in the micro ATX form factor for that more budget conscious build? Let me know in the comments what you guys would do and how you guys would build your 9070 PC, but thank you for watching to the end if you all did, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.